The Israeli military's Home Front Command announced that residents across the country may now leave shelters but should stay close to them following the successful interception of a new wave of Iranian missile attacks. Iran, remember, launched retaliatory strikes against locations across Israel following Israel's attacks on Iranian military and nuclear targets. Iran said that it had fired, quote-unquote, hundreds of various ballistic missiles towards Israel in what it called the beginning of its crushing response. We bring you the latest from the ground, but first listen in to what leaders of both countries had to say.
شهادت سرداران و دانشمندان عزیز که البته برای همه سنگین است و تعدادی از مردم غیر نظامی رو به ملت ایران به خانواده های اونها تبریک و تسلیت عرض می‌کنم. و اما مطلبی که مایل بودم.
We're in the midst of one of the greatest military operations in history, Operation Rising Lion. The Islamic regime, which has oppressed you for nearly 50 years, threatens to destroy my country, the State of Israel. The objective of Israel's military operation is to remove this threat, both the nuclear threat and the ballistic missile threat to Israel. And as we achieve our objectives, we're also clearing the path for you to achieve your objective, which is freedom. In the past 24 hours, we've taken out top military commanders, senior nuclear scientists, the Islamic regime's most significant enrichment facility, and a large portion of its ballistic missile arsenal. More is on the way.
Israel is under attack by Iran. Let's go back to Trey Yingst. He's in the suburbs of Tel Aviv at the site of the missile strike. Hey, Trey.
Yeah, Charlie, right now we're just outside of Tel Aviv where one of those Iranian ballistic missiles slammed into a residential building. You can see behind me just how much damage it did to this building. At least 20 people were wounded here, and we are learning there is one fatality. As we speak, crews are still going through the rubble. They are occasionally stopping their work to call out for survivors. I'm here with Dean Elston, the international spokesman for the Israeli police, to talk about what happened here tonight and the police efforts. Dean, what are your forces doing at this moment?
Well, I can tell you, if we're going to talk about what's happening tonight, I want to point out that when a terror regime consistently tells you death to America, death to Israel, this is what they're talking about. Numerous residential buildings here hit, numerous casualties, and that number is growing, unfortunately, as our crews are working together, our bomb disposal units together with the IDF, Home Front Command, and MADA, the paramedic first responders. We're all here making sure that we can secure this scene and also find those that were impacted by tonight's terror attack directly on their residential house.
And can you quickly talk about those efforts right now? We see these crews in the buildings up here, and they have headlamps on. They are calling out for survivors, seeing if anyone is trapped under the rubble. Very quickly, how would you describe those efforts?
This is still a very active scene, I can tell you that. The number is growing of the casualties. Our prayers are with them, with their families. We just call on the public to please demonstrate responsibility. Don't come here if you don't have to. Keep the roads clear for our emergency personnel, and definitely do not give out the exact locations. This is about operational security, not secrecy, but strategy to protect all of us.
Since early hours of the morning, Israel has carried out hundreds of attacks against different areas of the country, and Iran has not yet responded officially to the attacks, and the reports are early reports, and there is no confirmation. Since the morning, Israelis have targeted military sites, nuclear sites, and civilian areas, and there are confirmed reports of death among senior officials, including IRGC chief, armed forces chiefs of staff, and many other people, including nuclear scientists. And Israel has not stopped the attacks, and the situation is really tense now here, and we can hear explosions around Tehran, and the situation is really tense, and the attacks are being carried out against other places in the country, including Tabriz, Kermanshah, Shiraz, Isfahan, and nuclear sites including Fordo, Natanz, Parchin, and other places. The attacks have not stopped, and there is continuous attacks on these targets. So the point that I want to make is that Iran will respond, but the response will be very hard because the extent of Israeli attacks on Iran is really big, and the massive operation is being carried out, and many people think that this operation is Israel wants to open the way to continue attacks and continue the operation for several days, maybe several weeks, and Iran will respond accordingly. I don't know when, but for sure there will be a response, and this response could include Israeli sites inside Israel. It could include US bases in the region, and maybe Iran will withdraw. Maybe Iran could withdraw from the NPT, and because there is no reason for Iran to continue to continue its peaceful nuclear program. Iran has been under pressure, under sanctions, and yet it hasn't withdrawn from the NPT and been cooperating with the IAEA. But the situation now is changing the scene very much, and because there is no reason that Iran could continue cooperating with the IAEA, and this is a really big escalation from the Israeli side, and people in Iran think that without a green light from the US, Israel couldn't have launched this kind of attack, and people see US as responsible as the Israeli side, and people are urging the government to attack and start retaliating to this massive operation, and for sure Iran will carry out this response.
I'm being joined by Dr. Reza Khanzadeh, Senior Foreign Policy Advisor to the US-Iran Chamber of Commerce, joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us, sir. Firstly, how has this escalation affected Iran's trade with the US, especially those seeking humanitarian exemptions under the current sanctions?
Yeah, thanks for having me. There's essentially been a freeze when it comes to any type of trade between the two countries, US and Iran. Given the level of escalation that we've been seeing in the past 24 to 36 hours, and this being essentially the third round of escalation between Israel and Iran, going all the way back to April of 2024, and then again of October of 2024, and now with this heightened, level of escalation, really all types of trade, all types of business, negotiations and transactions have been on a freeze to see what will happen, moving forward in the coming days and weeks.
Right, and Mr. Khanzadeh, what has been the immediate impact on domestic industries on both sides?
Well, that remains to be seen, given how early on we are into this conflict. So far, reports internally within Iran that I have heard is that oil prices have gone up. The currency between the rial and the US dollar has again gone to the greater disadvantage of businesses inside Iran. Again, like I said, trade has been essentially at a standstill. But to see the ramifications of this going into the future with the weeks or months, we'll have to wait and see how much further this escalation will go. If these two countries continue to bombard each other with these, bombs, there could come a scenario where Iran might decide to, put a stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz, which is the lifeline of oil shipments, and that could have a severe impact not just on domestic businesses in Iran, but also regionally and also globally.
Right, and do you think that Iran's deepening ties with Russia and China may have influenced its strategy this time?
I don't see it playing out that way. Russia obviously has its hands full with its war against Ukraine, and China has its hands full as well. one example is with Taiwan, but also the types of conversations that China has been having with the Trump administration. Very rarely do I see a scenario where we would see Russia and China come to the aid of Iran, whether that be intelligence sharing, military equipment, and things of that nature. I don't see it happening. Really, what it comes down to is we have Iran on one side, and then we have Israel and the United States on the other side, and this could escalate to a point of no return, to where Israel could find itself in a war of attrition with Iran, and that level of war of attrition is in favor of Israel for obvious reasons, because they have the support of the United States. But then that could run the risk of the United States being dragged into this battle between Israel and Iran, and then it gets to another level that many experts, including myself, do not see that happening and do not want to see that happen, because then we might see other countries get involved as well.
Right, and how can the US still support diplomacy and economic engagement with Iran considering these escalations?
Well, that's been kind of the outlier as far as US foreign policy is concerned. Historically, we've seen very different strategies when it comes to a Democratic president or a Republican president, but Trump kind of borrows from both playbooks, if you will. In the Washington, D.C. bubble, so to speak, when it comes to U.S. foreign policy, specifically with Israel and towards or against Iran, you're either on the left or on the right. You're either hawkish or you're a dove. And Trump seems to be treading somewhere in the middle, where he sees this attack by Israel as another bargaining chip at the negotiating table. And we've seen him post this on social media, where he essentially is telling Tehran, you have to come to the negotiating table and we have to come to a deal, because if we don't, then more attacks from Israel could happen. And that's the kind of strategy that we see coming out of the Trump administration. Now, how realistic that is, I don't think it is. Like I said, historically speaking, when it comes to foreign policy negotiations of this magnitude, this type of approach has not worked in the past. And I don't see it happening again. Just because Trump is the one making these comments doesn't mean everyone else is going to listen to him. Look, especially with Tehran, they are a very proud country, and they will not capitulate to these types of warnings, if you will.
Right, and what role can regional powers play at the moment? That's UAE, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia.
Well, they do have a lot of sway. Whether or not they choose to be active in that level of participation, I'm very doubtful that they will. At this point, this conflict is squarely on the shoulders of Iran and Israel. I don't see any regional neighbors going to the aid of Iran. And to the extent of what we've been seeing thus far, it's really just certain types of narratives and languages coming out from all these, Arab countries in Turkey, for example, condemning these attacks by Israel, saying that they, started this war unprovoked, which is correct in my assessment. But I feel that that is the extent to which they will be involved in this conflict. Now, of course, like I said, it's very early on. It hasn't even been 48 hours since this conflict started. So a lot could happen, a lot could change. And this is truly a chess match, between Israel and Iran. So regional neighbors could get involved if this escalation goes beyond the borders of Israel attacking Iran and then Iran counterattacking against Israel.
Right, and how is public opinion shifting in the US on the escalation between Iran and Israel?
Well, as of right now, we've seen a mixture. For the most part, unfortunately, most Americans inside the United States aren't really privy to this type of conflict. They don't. It's not at the top of their news feed, so to speak. But those that do follow, do not have an appetite for another type of conflict or war where the United States is dragged in, and then U.S. taxpayers are paying that type of conflict or paying for that type of war. So there's definitely that aspect of it. But then again, there is still a strong level of power as far as media propaganda and backdoor conversations within the Washington, D.C. bubble, specifically within the hawkish side of politics in D.C., where they do want to see this escalation go a bit further. They do want to see more damage done to Iran's nuclear, facilities, and also the military facilities and factories, and also military bases and what have you. So there is that push, but so far we've seen kind of a whisper or a light tread towards that direction. There really hasn't been a strong push, for the most part, because I think the vast majority of the United States, populace, just does not want to see the U.S. go into another war where they see Israel trying to bait, Washington, bait Trump into that, kind of war.
Thank you, Mr. Khanzada, for joining us.